green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in on a thirsty Thursday. I'm going to have a lot of coffee. Here with us on Birds 365. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're here to hang with you for the next 2 hours. Got two good guests coming your way, John Stolnis and Rick Saratella. So you want to stay tuned for those two gents. Johnny Mac did not know that DeAndre Swift was going to be making his first official appearance as an Eagle, not here in Philadelphia. He's a Philly boy, but got a chance to talk to him, did the Philadelphia media yesterday. And I don't know, maybe it's because I thought it would be a good trade ahead of time before the Eagles ever pulled the trigger on it. I'd never really seen the kid interviewed all that much during his playing career. It seemed like a good young man, a motivated young man, a happy young man, and a pretty smart young man at that. What do you take out of the DeAndre Swift meet and greet yesterday?
Yeah, Lama Day Zacchaeus as well. It was St. Joe's Prep Day down at the NovaCare complex. Obviously, it was virtual for us, but reporters. But yeah, both of them spoke yesterday for the first time since returning home. Yeah, I mean, you know, one thing about Kirby Smart in Georgia, I said the same thing about Nolan Smith and Kaylee Ringo. You know, they're Nakobe Dean as well, if you want to go back, and Jordan Davis. They're all, you know, very well spoken. They're all and even Jalen Carter, he gets all the, obviously, you know what, because of what happened off the field. But it's not like he comes in as a bad guy. Seems very likable. You know, I think they're doing a pretty good job down there getting people ready for life, not just football, from all indications of the people that have come to Philadelphia. So kudos to him. DeAndre's just another one.
Sounds like he'll fit in, because I thought what you said yesterday was smart. He paid deference to Jalen Hurts. Smart thing to do. He is the quarterback. He is the leader of the franchise. He's the face of the franchise, let's be honest. And said he's looking forward to playing with him and working with him and learning from him. Exactly what you wanted to hear. And that he just looks at himself as a piece of the puzzle. That he's not coming in here, first-round draft pick, 1,000-yard rusher. He's going to come in here and be the offense. He knows that's not the case. We know that's not the case. And that's a good place to start if the guy's got the right attitude. Sometimes when you get dealt, and one of the more interesting things I thought yesterday was it seemed to me like for him it came out of left field, that he did not necessarily see this coming, that he thought he was going to be the lead back in Detroit again and didn't know that they were potentially going to go in another direction and trade him. Sometimes that happens. You cop a bit of an attitude. Oh, I'll show them. I'll go to Philly and get 2,000 yards. And no, he handled it well yesterday, and that he realized, yeah, Philly's got some pretty damn good offensive weapons. I'm just going to be asked to go in there and be a piece of the puzzle. I was very glad to hear the way he stated yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think he knew. He didn't know before the draft. He kind of, because if you think about it, last year they had the two-headed beast at running back, and then they lost Williams, but they brought in Montgomery. So from his standpoint, it's just a different sort of setup, different guy as a compatriot. I don't even want to see compliment because those two kind of shared it, but once he saw Gibbs go at 12, he knew the writing was on the wall. He did get a follow up and admitted to that. And we all did. That's Howie was probably on the phone 15 seconds later. Yeah, you draft a kid number 12 overall, you sign somebody in free agency, got room for anybody else. So it was almost a fait accompli at that point. And look, it's a good opportunity for him. He talked, I asked him about running behind that offensive line. Detroit has a very good offensive line, but the Eagles, they arguably have the best offensive line in football. And plus you have Jalen Hurts and the +1 aspect. We always talk about creating space for the running backs. Defense is always concerned about him pulling the football on the backside. There's not a better place in the NFL for a running back.
Right. If I'm playing running back in the NFL and have my choice, land where I want, Philadelphia would be right at the top of my list. One other thing, and maybe you recognize the voice, I didn't. When they went to talking about Hard Knocks and the fact that the Lions were the team on Hard Knocks last year and quote unquote his portrayal on Hard Knocks, which I don't think he really had a portrayal, but in the first episode, Deuce Staley was kind of tough on him, that he's got to turn his shoulders and make the tackler pay rather than skitter out of bounds. Nothing that should surprise us here in Philadelphia, right? Deuce Staley was a hard-nosed, you can use another word in there, type coach. His time here in Philadelphia, that's just Deuce.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you got this scared cat who's going to run out of bounds all the time. Deuce had to get inside his no. Deuce does that with everybody. That's the way Deuce coaches. That wasn't anything different. I don't think it was a knock on DeAndre Swift. I've been saying this, John, for long before you and I ever started doing shows. I got no problems with a running back who on 1st and 10, rather than dropping his shoulders and getting a first down, it skips out of bounds and makes it 2nd and 7. Those 2 yards are not going to decide the game, but it keeps the running back in the game. I'm perfectly fine with. There are times, 3rd down, yeah, you got to get the first down. You got to do whatever it takes to move those chains. But on 1st down, if he scampers out of bounds, some of the greatest backs in the history of the National Football League use the sideline as their friend. I think that's a complete non-factor. Do you think?
No, yeah. Back? Who the best ever was at that? Emmitt Smith.
Oh, absolutely.
Would just, get everything he could and just step out of bounds. And I think, I don't know, 18,000 yards later, it seems to have worked out for him. So I'm with you. There's the opposite, if you're going to put your shoulder down. And I always say the only time I ever saw Frank Reich mad, nicest guy in the world, doesn't curse. The only time I ever saw him mad, different, not a running back, but when Carson Wentz put his shoulder down in Carolina and tried to bulldoze in the end zone, and that's your quarterback. So it's even more of a concern. There's no need to do that. You're just going to get hurt. And if you're a key part of the team, it's smart football. But that's one of the things you bring up. Deuce Staley, and now he's in Carolina, but when he was in Detroit, and obviously we know Dan Campbell, they run things in more of an old school way than they run them here. And I think, the players like it better here, to be honest. And we can argue, and we have argued. We talked about that forever, but last year, but it worked. So until it doesn't work, I think DeAndre is going to be a little happier here with the practice workload, the off season workload, and all that kind of stuff.
You know, I like Hard Knocks. At least the one in the beginning of the season. The mid-season one just doesn't work as well for me. But I watched every single episode last year. Detroit Lions, who the hell cares? Why I care? Because they're on Hard Knocks, and I think it's a really well done show, and it gets you ready for an upcoming season. My takeaway from DeAndre Swift on that was, is he on a team? Because they kept featuring Jamal Williams every single way, and they talk more about the guys who are or aren't going to make the cut, so they don't show you highlights from the first quarter of preseason games. I almost forgot that he was on the team. I guess he was mentioned, and Deuce yelled at him a little bit in the first episode. But no, I think DeAndre Swift is going to be a very good fit here. So that leads itself to the question of, how is he a fit here? Last year, I looked it up, John. I was actually surprised by the numbers. Carries by running backs. Not Jalen Hurts runs, because those are different. And the coach is on record as saying, we're paying him more. It doesn't mean I'm going to use him less. So expect his workload to be about the same. Now, seasons are different. Maybe they're in more competitive games next year. Got a different guy calling the plays than last year. So I'm not going to just comp one to the other. But if you believe they're going to be similar, how big a percentage do you think Miles Sanders had of running back runs last year?
Oh, quite a bit. I don't have it in front of me, but I mean,
I do. I did the math. I just wanted to see off the top of your head what the number was.
75. We're taking out the quarterback, right?
Yeah, quarterback runs are out.
75 or 80.
Yeah, it was 71% of the Eagles' runs by running backs last year with Miles Sanders. Yeah, somebody's got to get those runs. Is it going to be DeAndre Swift? Is it going to be Rashad Penny? Does Trey Sermon's production double from 2 to 4 carries this upcoming year? That's something that needs to be figured out, and it'll be the offensive brain trust of the Eagles that will do so. I'm okay with them going into the season. I like Miles. I wanted to see Miles stay. He got an average NFL payday to go to Carolina. Not blow the roof off the payroll, but
it's not good for running back payroll.
Exactly.
I think at some point he was number one. I don't think if anybody passed him, I'd have to look. But
yeah, free agency wise, he was number one.
Free agency
right.
wise, I meant. He was number one on the free agent. So it is what it is. But that's pretty good to be number one.
And he should have been. He was, at least for me.
We talk about Jamal Williams. I mean, what that guy had, I don't know, 16, 17 touchdowns last year.
He did, but he didn't have 1,200 yards the way that Miles did.
He had over $1,000, though. I don't know exactly what he had, but I know he went over 1,000. But no, he didn't have as much as Miles, and obviously he's not as explosive as Miles. But 17 touchdowns, that's pretty impressive. But getting back to 71%. Yeah, you got to replace the carries, but Moneyball, you don't have one. It doesn't have to be one guy. You got to replace the efficacy, and that's where Swift and Penny come in. So if Penny gets hurt, maybe Swift picks it up, or vice versa, because they both have an injury history. Rashad's much more significant than Swift's, but Swift has missed. Like, he's sort of like Miles before last year. Miles would miss a couple games every year, and last year he stayed healthy. That's partially one of the reasons he got up to 71% of that number. If you miss 3 or 4 games, it's going to skew it, and that's typically been his history. That's been Swift's history as well, missing a few games every season. Not serious injuries that – I think he played 13, if I'm not mistaken. I looked at it a while ago in his 3 seasons, which is kind of weird, but nonetheless, a couple games missed each year. Same as Miles, and who knows if you stay healthy, things get better. Obviously, from a production standpoint, but Howie's been pretty consistent, man. I mean, they're expecting a little bit of a shift. They know they got lucky on the injury front last year, and I give them credit for that, because they're not. at some point I was thinking, they think they've gamed the system with their philosophy and how they run things. And to a certain degree, they believe it's not to a certain degree. They believe that's the right way to do things. But he is cognizant of it's probably not going to be like it was last year. He said it multiple occasions. So I think he's well aware. And Miles was one of those guys who was typically had the history of missing 2-3 games at least. And he was out there. So that helps.
Yeah, the Eagles would prefer you use the phrase law of averages rather than luck. They get all worked up when you go, oh, you got lucky. There's no such thing as luck. It's the way you do things, doing things right that get you the results that you need. Well, the law of averages say that the Eagles will not be as injury-free this upcoming season as they were last year. I agree with you. It's luck, John. They just don't like to use that word, but there is some luck involved here, and how he can dismiss it all that he wants. But I agree with you. They've done a nice job at giving themselves at certain positions, not every position, linebacker. Do they have depth where if they do have a rash of injuries this year, they've got guys who can come off the bench and get the job done. All right, coming off our bench, joining us is John Stolnis from Bleeding Green Nation. He's going to be the first guest today. Stay right here with Mac and Mac on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. We're back on Mac, McMullen, and McDonald. We had a third voice and an insightful one at that from Bleeding Green Nation and co-host of the Eye on the Enemy Eagles podcast. John Stolnis jumps in with us here on Birds 365. Johnny S., haven't talked to you since the draft. We need your take on this because we've gotten it from basically everybody else we've had on the show.
Yeah.
How did Howie Roseman get smarter than every other person in the National Football League?
I don't know, man. He really does seem to have. He does seem to be one step ahead of everybody else at this stage of the game. And there was a fair amount of skill. This was all put into place a couple of years ago for with the Carson Wentz trade. They started to accumulate picks that way. The Saints trade that he made last year was really what kind of catapulted them this year. No team that goes to the Super Bowl should pick in the top 10 of the draft. I mean, that's not the way the league works, but getting that number 10 pick allowed them to move up, and he got some luck too. I mean, sometimes the board falls your way. Teams in front of you make decisions that benefit you as it's getting closer. I certainly think that there was a very high degree of likelihood that Jalen Carter would have got taken number 5 by the Seahawks. They went in a different direction. The Texans jump in and, they get up to number 3, which kind of moves some other pieces around. And so you have a little bit of a mixture of luck and you have a little mixture of skill. And Howie Roseman, no matter what you can say about him, and really everybody's singing his praises. I know other NFL GMs are sick and tired of everybody praising Howie Roseman, and that's just a shame. Too bad, so sad. But you got to give him his props. He just seems to have a good handle, and I think you got to credit the other guys in the organization who he works with. He doesn't do it alone, and the process that they have. They've really honed it over these last few years to a point where I think that no matter how these players turn out, the process was very good in these last few drafts, especially this last one.
Yeah, that's what I always say, John. The decision-making makes sense. That process makes sense typically with the Eagles. Not everything's going to work out. You can make a good decision, get a bad outcome, but the more good decisions you make, the better chance you have to have a good outcome. I think that bears out over the larger sample size. But you mentioned that it was Peter Schrager said it on the NFL Network that, bunch of GMs around this league are getting tired of Howie getting his flowers from everybody in the media. But they're deserved. And so I'm trying to boil it down to the essence of it. And I come up with 2 things. And I come up with experience. Jody knows I love bringing up because Jim Schwartz, startup cost. Same with players. Rookie players, they have those same thing with rookie GMs. They've never done it before. They make mistakes. And guess what? They get fired before they can correct the mistakes when they make mistakes. So that's the second part of it, John. Jeffrey Lurie, the long leash. Howie Roseman can do things that other GMs can't do. So if I had to give you a percentage, chop it up. Experience, Jeffrey Lurie, that long leash. Why would you say Howie would have? What's a bigger part of that advantage Howie has over other GMs?
That's a really good question. I would probably put it at 60% experience, 40% long leash from Jeffrey Lurie, because having that long leash allows you to take chances. It allows you to kind of, there are teams that passed on Jalen Carter for a very good reason. And it could blow up in the Eagles' faces. There is a chance that could happen. All of the picks that the Eagles made here, they're not locks. They all could go awry. But I think Howie Roseman knows that he has more of an ability to take a chance, to take a risk on certain guys than other GMs do, because they're year to year. And Howie Roseman has won the Super Bowl. He's gotten the team back to another Super Bowl. I think he has convinced Jeffrey Lurie and the fan base that he knows how to put a Super Bowl team together. He's done it twice now, and now he's trying to keep this team together. So that leash really helps. But I also think that Howie Roseman has learned from his experience. And that's the thing. You can have guys with a lot of experience, and sometimes they get locked into the way they used to do things, or they get locked into past patterns of behavior. Howie Roseman, I don't think, does that. I think he's learned from past mistakes. I think he learned from the Jalen Reagor pick that it's not a wise idea to pass up on a superior football player for a guy you think might be a better scheme fit for that particular next year and year after. I think he's not fallen victim to the sunk cost fallacy, where you're paying a guy a ton of money and then you feel like you have to hang on to him because you've committed so much financially to him. That takes a level of maturity that I think he gained from when he got demoted, when Chip Kelly was around. And so that's the most encouraging thing to me, is I see a general manager who has learned from mistakes and who is not outthinking himself. He's not doing a galaxy brain thing. He's making the smart moves that I think most of us would make, but they all make sense, and he's being universally praised for it.
I'm going to need you to project on the Eagles' second first-round draft pick, Nolan Smith, because I haven't even figured out my own position on the young man, because I was not a fan of drafting him at 10. Not that he isn't a very good player, not that he wasn't arguably one of the 10 most talented players. I just didn't know if he was a perfect fit with the Eagles. And if you're going to be drafting a guy at number 10, he better be a perfect fit, because he's very similar to Hassan Reddick, the way they play the game, their size, how they would fit into a scheme defense. But when you get the 10th best player at number 30, you don't say no. You say, please give me the card so I could turn it in.
Yeah.
But he's still that same player that is very similar to Hassan Reddick. If he's Hassan Reddick's backup, and when you get Hassan off the field, you put him in and don't lose anything.
Right.
Is he a fit? Does he work with what the Eagles want to do? I don't know how you can't say it's a great draft pick when you get that kind of talent at that spot in the draft, but is he going to be a seamless fit into the Eagles defense?
Right. Again, you're talking about, if you're looking at the process, it was a no-brainer pick there at number 30, no doubt about it. As far as how he works in on this rotation here in 2023, I think for an undersized guy, he does play the run better than you would expect. And so I don't think you necessarily have to pull him off the field in running situations, although he's not going to be used that way here in 2023. You still have Brandon Graham, who can be that guy on the other side, and he'll be a passing down guy. But I think as many guys as you can have that can get to the quarterback, they'll figure it out. I have all the confidence in the world Sean Desai will be able to work him in. And it sounded like they wanted to think about using him as a linebacker in certain situations. So maybe you can use him in certain blitz packages that we didn't see under Jonathan Gannon. I think having Hassan Reddick and Nolan Smith lined up on each side of the line on certain passing downs would be terrifying to offensive linemen. And to a quarterback who knows he's not going to have any time to throw the football. So I think there are certain ways that you can use him, and use him a lot. I don't think this is going to be a guy who only plays like 10, 15 snaps a game. I think he's going to make a contribution. Certainly, if you need to rest Hassan Reddick a little more, you don't want him to play quite as many snaps in 2023. I think then you have a guy who's very much like that in Nolan Smith, and that's a really nice thing, that you don't have to have a changeup. You can just have those guys. And we saw last year how important having depth on the defensive line was with getting to the quarterback. Everybody was fresh all game long, and as long as they're not playing on an ice rink surface, they're going to get to. It sounds like they're going to continue to get to the quarterback.
Yeah, John. They had 70 sacks last year, right?
Yeah.
And they still, I hesitate to bring up the name because, it's not Jody's favorite, but Derek Barnett tore his ACL in week 1. And they were obsessed with getting that fourth pass rusher. They tried to do it with Robert Quinn. It didn't work. They were hoping Patrick Johnson would take that step forward. Didn't work. They still, with 70 sacks, they wanted a fourth guy. They wanted to come at you in waves. They were still hoping to the very end, maybe Robert Quinn's the guy that'll make the Brandon Graham play in the Super Bowl. Didn't work out.
Yeah.
Even if he made one play in the playoffs, it would have been worth it. Didn't work out. They were looking for it. Now they have it. And, he doesn't have to play a lot right away. Right. But when Brandon Graham eventually does leave, you got to start talking about extensions for Reddick and Sweat, who are great players. Can never have enough pass rushers. Yeah, I don't think I told you this. This was a funny story, Jody. Obviously, I didn't tell it to you, John, but I texted an NFC personnel guy after the Eagles took Carter. And I said, basically all I said was, what do you think? Eagles, Carter, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't expecting an answer because he was kind of busy. I was expecting an answer days later. I got an answer that night, not after the Carter pick, after the Smith pick. And the answer was, rhymes with duck. This team with these players and that pass rush, I'm concerned about the back seven, but they're more talented than they were last year on the front. When you put Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the mix, on paper it looks frightening.
Beware those startup costs.
The startup costs exist, but they're more talented up front. It might take a while. But Jalen Carter, I mean, he's just going to be better than Javon Hargrave. If he isn't, it's because of the off the field stuff. I mean, he's so gifted. He's going to be better. Nolan Smith, there's more question marks about, but the Eagles already know how to use these undersized pass rushers. They've proven it. I got to admit, though, John, you scared me a little bit with playing him at linebacker. I don't want any part of that. Any part of that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to discuss it. I think about Hassan Reddick in Arizona early in his career. I think about Micah Parsons in Dallas before they got injuries. By the way, everybody's like that. Dallas was trying to make him an off-ball linebacker until they got 2 injuries, DeMarcus Lawrence, and I forget the second one that year. But then they were like, all right, let's see if the kid can do it. He can do it. Boy, off-ball linebacker, I'm going to red flag that.
Yeah, not my idea. That's what I think, just to be clear. I think, that was something Howie Roseman mentioned, or it was Nick Sirianni the night he was drafted. But I think, if he does that, it's like a 1-year thing, because they are hurting at linebacker right now. And like you mentioned, Derek Barnett's coming back. They do have edge rushers. So, I
didn't even think of that, John. You just scared me.
Yeah, I don't want. I mean, he obviously, if you're looking at Micah Parsons as the template, you don't want him playing linebacker. The smart thing would be to go out and get a linebacker here over the next couple of months before the start of training camp. But I think it's a possibility, maybe as a temporary solution, if you're not able to upgrade the linebacker spot. But I think long term, his future is as an edge rusher on the defensive line.
I don't think any of the three of us break down game film of the Cowboys and watch every single play after the game is over and done with. We're all Eagle guys. I think Parsons still plays a little off-ball linebacker with his hand.
He did very little last year, but they already said he's a full-time edge rusher now. They just said it like this week. They just said it. They're like, finally. Now, he played very little, but he did play a little bit.
Yeah.
And now they've said, all right, he's an edge rusher.
He's a defensive end, which is smart. And I saw where Parsons said he's put on a couple extra pounds of pure muscle, that he's weighing in at 152 now. He played at 252. He played 248 last year, and he doesn't expect to ever be over 252. Now that they've gotten Nolan Smith, and when I say they, I mean the Eagles, does that mean they're not going to be in the running for Micah Parsons? Because I get this feeling that Micah Parsons wants to be an Eagle in the worst way. He's always commenting on him. He's always doing podcasts with A.J. Brown where A.J.'s dropping hints like, Micah, Philly's a great place to play, great place to live. Does this now take him out of the Micah Parsons running for when he hits free agency a couple of years from now?
It could. It depends on Nolan Smith's development, obviously. If Hassan Reddick is still playing the way he's playing and Nolan Smith emerges as a guy, it could, because he's going to demand big money. And Jalen Hurts, obviously his contract is not as damaging as we were fearing it would be in the next couple of 3 years. But there is going to be less money to go around. Now, I know this team, they do invest on the lines. And so if you're going to invest money in a free agent, Micah Parsons would be a really smart move. That'll be a nice problem to have. Well, I think it could, depending on how Nolan Smith develops, but I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, when you're that good, I certainly
I kind of agree with Jody in that, he does bring up the Eagles a lot. He seems to have a lot of respect for the
all
Eagles.
the time.
Well, Penn State guy,
Yeah. They'll franchise him. I mean, he's that type of player that they won't even mess with that. Now, something could happen. He could get hurt.
Which, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, John. Now that they do that, going to cost them more money because he's a defensive end. Franchise tag for a DE is a lot more than it is for a linebacker. Just remember that for 2 years from now when they try to slap the franchise tag on
all I'm saying is I don't want to get Eagles fans' hopes up. I don't think there's going to be any path.
That's just me pointing out what Micah Parsons said. It's not like I'm making this up out of left field. Micah Parsons is the one who keeps dropping hints he'd like to be an Eagle.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a lot of players that would like to be in certain situations, but they can't necessarily get there. Later in life, maybe if you're Tom Brady, uh, you can you can backdoor negotiate with everybody. But I don't think Mike is going to have that opportunity. But we shall see. And the Eagles are pretty good at edge rusher. They're probably not going to be in the market, but they're always looking to add. One of the things you bring up, John, and the foundational philosophy is that addition, not only on the defensive line, offensive line. For the third consecutive year, I think Howie has said, and I wish people would pay more attention when we have these Bijan Robinson talks pre-draft. Hey, if it's even, I'm taking the line. He said it 3 consecutive years now. And he does it. They do not take off-ball linebackers. I mean, I'm concerned. And it's from the point of, I agree with them in general. Devalued position, not nearly as important. I'm not asking them to take Jack Campbell at 18. But I can't go into a season with Nicholas Morrow, who has not one penny of guaranteed money. Nakobe Dean, look, I'm with everybody else. I think he's got a chance to be a really good player, but the reality is he had 36 snaps or whatever it was last year. It's all projection at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of scary for a Super Bowl team. And you scared me even more with the Nolan Smith talk. Now I'm scared about that. I got to buy it. I have a dog. I can't criticize my dog by saying I need to buy a dog. I'm scared by that. They can't go no. They got to bring in a veteran linebacker. Am I wrong?
No, I think the name that everybody is mentioning right now is Patrick Queen from the Ravens. He's a guy who it looks like could be on the move. It seems like a perfect summertime trade for Howie. He's got all those picks in 2024 that he can use to go get him. He's in the last year of his deal. We know Howie loves guys in the last year of his deal. We saw him do that last year. Last season, in the offseason, there were some obvious holes on defense and some obvious solutions to those holes. And Howie Roseman went about making the obvious choices to fill them, and it all worked out. It's not to say it's all going to work out again, but Patrick Queen is an established linebacker. You can fit him in under the salary cap. You can restructure his contract and sign him for a few extra years to kind of spread the money out a little bit. It's probably not going to cost you more than maybe a 4th round pick next year, 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. So I don't know exactly what the compensation would look like, but whatever it is, they can afford it. And it would make all the sense in the world to bring him aboard because then you said you don't have to squeeze Nolan Smith in at linebacker. You don't have to rely on Nicholas Morrow and his non-guaranteed contract to suddenly become a starter. And it would also take the pressure, I think, off of Nakobe Dean to have to be the guy at linebacker right now so that all the focus and attention wouldn't be on him to produce. It would lighten his load quite a bit. And so that's the move to me that makes the most sense. And I guarantee there will be other linebackers who are cut by teams as we get closer to training camp. There will be opportunities to improve in that spot. After what I saw last year, I know that the Eagles roster is not set yet. There's plenty of time.
Yeah, I had given the Queen thought some trade, talked about it earlier in the week here on Birds 365. Minimum you got to pay is a 3 because they can keep him and let him walk out the door, and the projection is at least a 4 in losing the free agent in a compensatory pick. So why would you give up a year of the kid's talents and skills for a 4 from somebody else just because it comes 1 year earlier? No, I think you got to give him at least a 3, and I think he's well worth it. We'll see how the linebacker shakes out. All right, John, I've asked this of several of our guests this week. Want to run it by you. Let's say Roger Goodell puts in a phone call to Jeff Lurie today and says, we're just tweaking the last couple items of the schedule for 2023, which is supposed to come out next week. You're scheduled to play the Chiefs again. We in the office think it would be pretty cool if the first game of the year is Kansas City hosting Philadelphia in a Super Bowl rematch. We could do Buffalo numbers with that, Jeff. Mahomes again. Sorry, I don't have to paint the picture for you. Everyone knows why it would be a phenomenal game. If you're Jeff Lurie, do you say, oh, yeah, give us that shot. We want to kick the season off. Let's go. Prime timers. Thank you, Roger. Or you give me a choice. Nah, we'll play Kansas City a little later in the year. Thank you, but no, Mr. Commissioner. If you're left Jeff Lurie, what's best for the organization? Would you say yes or no to opening up against the Chiefs on Thursday night?
I think what's best for the organization from Jeff Lurie's position is what's going to be best for the financial aspect of the organization. And I think starting off against the Chiefs in a Super Bowl rematch in prime time, opening week of the season, where you are the talk of the NFL, I think that's what Jeffrey Lurie would want. I think that's what the organization would want. And I think they should jump at it if it's offered to them. And you're catching, you're starting off the season, kind of, you don't know what exactly you're going to get. Same for the Chiefs. The Chiefs might, have started off seasons slow in the past and then come on late in the season. So I don't think there's a competitive advantage or disadvantage one way or the other, playing the Chiefs opening week or playing them later in the season. So if the competitive advantage isn't really there, then yeah, let's start off as being the talk of the NFL in week one. The Eagles already pretty much are the talk of the NFL, no matter where it is. Let's do it. This is a marquee team. This is the marquee team in the NFC right now. Give me the Chiefs on opening week. Give me the Super Bowl rematch on opening week. I don't think you'll get a letdown from the players on opening week if you're starting off against Kansas City. I'm absolutely on board with that. I think Jeffrey Lurie would be on board with it too.
What about Black Friday? A lot of talk. I think Peter King threw it out there that Eagles Giants, for whatever reason, might be the Black Friday game. Is there some, because you're right, the Eagles are typically a marquee team if they're even somewhat relevant, because the fan base is so passionate. They get a lot of night games, a lot of special games. Reporters hate it like me. Reporters like me hate it, but it happens. And now they're good on top of it. So really good. It makes sense, but do you think there's a competitive disadvantage when you're moving around? You're playing extra Monday night games. You're playing extra Sunday night games. You're playing Friday. You're playing Thursday. You think that hurts the Eagles at all?
I think players would probably prefer to play every game on Sunday at 1:00 or every Sunday at 4:00 to get into a rhythm. So sure, I think so, but I think this team is so good. I don't think it's a big deal. I think, and nobody likes playing on Thursday. That's a horrible decision the NFL made a few years ago. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like those games are going away, but the Thursday games are just awful. And I don't know how we get rid of them. Black Friday would be only slightly better. It's obviously an extra day to rest and prepare in between games. So I would rather play on, if my options are Thursday or Black Friday, I'll take Black Friday. But obviously Saturday or Sunday is where you want to play most of the time. And if the Eagles are moving around a lot, I think that could be a problem. But, for teams like the Patriots for all those years that are playing on all kinds of different times, and the 49ers and it didn't really seem to have an impact on them moving around. And I don't know, the Eagles have played a lot of different times the last few years, and I don't think it's had a real negative impact. So the players would prefer, I think, a set schedule, but I don't necessarily think moving around Sunday night, Monday night, 4:00, 1:00 is that big a deal. The Thursday games, you want to minimize those as much as possible.
That's where having faith in your coaching staff comes into play. Because that is a different week, different prep. Make sure the players know what they've got to do to be ready for the next game. Take the extra downtime when you're playing early, and then you got something on the back end. That's all on the coaching staff, and we've got a pretty high opinion of the coaching staff, or at least the head coach here in town. The coaching staff we got to find out about, because they've got a new offensive coordinator to do new defensive coordinator. I don't know if I've answered this one, John, when we've had you on. Your opinion on, have the Eagles held steady? The drop-off won't be all that significant. I think they can actually be better with the two new coordinators they have in place. What's your read on the guys who are coming in to take the places of their former OC in DC?
Well, I think in Brian Johnson, you have the guy who has been amongst the most important pieces of Jalen Hurts' development. And Shane Steichen certainly is a brilliant play caller. He proved that over the last couple of years since he took over the job in the middle of the 21 season. So Brian Johnson as a play caller, we still don't know about. And that's going to be a question mark, and we won't know until the season rolls around. But these guys don't all do their jobs in a vacuum. So I'm sure Brian Johnson was kind of following what Shane Steichen was doing. I'm sure understanding his rhythms a little bit as a play caller. And I'm sure there was some learning that went on with that, in addition to helping Jalen Hurts develop into the passer that he has become. So my confidence level, as much as it can be for a new coach with no play calling experience, is about as high as it can be. As far as Sean Desai goes, I think that's going to be a much more open question. How much will his defense look like Jonathan Gannon's defense? We don't want it to look a whole lot like Jonathan Gannon's defense, but we do know he is inspired by Vic Fangio. So there are going to be some aspects of that. I think there has got to be a middle ground between like an all-out blitzing defense and what we saw from Jonathan Gannon last year. And that's really what I want. I want a defensive coordinator who's flexible. I want a defensive coordinator whose game plan can adjust to the team that they're playing. I want a defensive coordinator who can utilize the advantages that you have. I don't think that Gannathan did a good enough job utilizing the advantages that he had at cornerback last year. The middle of the field was too wide open, and that's why I thought Darius Slay and James Bradbury didn't get the interception opportunities that they otherwise might. It was way too easy for teams to keep the ball in the middle of the field. I would like to see Sean Desai use those cornerbacks, try and do their best to funnel the ball to the outside to allow their cornerbacks who are elite, and we're paying them as elite players to make elite plays. I don't think they were given that opportunity as much last year as they should have.
Now, here's my concern with that, John. Statistics are what they are. The Eagles had the #1 passing defense in the NFL last season. If you use any advanced number, they were top 5. How much can poor Sean Desai improve on that? Especially losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Epps, and in theory, probably going to have a rookie. If I were a betting man, I'd say Sidney Brown is going to start probably next to Terrell Edmonds. Reed Blankenship sort of the safety plan there. The corners are the corners, and they've got more depth at corner. But James Bradbury had a career year, and he's had a good career, and he had a career year. Second team All-Pro. Slay was better early than late. Avante probably played the best he's ever played. Now was injured quite a bit, so if he can stay healthy, that would help. But just from a pure efficacy standpoint, I'm using that word too much today, but I apologize. How much better could it possibly get? And my concern is the expectations. Like, I get, you win the Super Bowl, but you got to get to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And that is kind of harder even than winning the game, believe it or not. So I'm concerned about poor Sean Desai coming in here with these unrealistic expectations. Is that a worthy concern?
I think so, especially because so much of your high-impact talent that you added on the draft was on the defensive side of the ball. They really made a concerted effort to focus on that area, and I think the perception is that the Eagles got a lot of star players in this draft and that they're going to play like star players in year one, and that shouldn't be the expectation. I think you're right. We need to understand Jalen Carter is not going to be Javon Hargrave in year one. I think he will be better than Javon Hargrave very soon because Javon Hargrave is getting older and Carter's just starting his career. But in 2023, I would bet all the money that I've got on Hargrave being a more productive player than Carter here in 2023. And again, we don't know. So I do think you're right. I think there are maybe some unrealistic expectations on Sean Desai's defense, but I do think they also are still loaded on the defensive line. I think the sack numbers are not going to reach 70, but they still should be among the league leaders in sacks. They still should be a top 3 team in terms of total sacks this year. And I think they could, in the second half of the season, we saw the turnovers kind of disappear. And we know turnovers are kind of luck-based and they fluctuate wildly. I think they could get more out of the cornerbacks than they got last season. So I think the defensive line will continue to pressure the quarterback, and that can still create opportunities. I don't know how much Jonathan Gannon had to do with those defensive linemen getting pressure last year. He wasn't a guy who did a lot of stunts. He didn't do a lot of creative things on the defensive front. He basically just told those guys to go get the quarterback, and they largely did. So I think that's a fair thing. I think worrying about Sean Desai and overvaluing what he has and all that is legit. But I still think we should have the expectation that this will be a good defense this year.
If easier equals success, I'll take easier every day of the week. So I got no problems with how Jonathan Gannon designed those 70 sacks. They got him. That's all I care about.
Sure.
But speaking of the former Eagle defensive coordinator, let me revisit this with you one time. I'll play Roger Goodell. You play Jeff Lurie. Okay, John?
All right. Do I get his money?
Yeah, you do. Whatever
Awesome.
you need to make this scenario work in your head.
Julian, you got to get rid of Julian, John.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do my best.
If you can send Julian on a Howie Roseman during the Chip Kelly era vacation, you got the spot. Jeff, it's Raj. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, bud.
Good. I know we talked about that whole Kansas City opening game thing, and you said you'd sign on for it. Thank you very much for that, by the way. But we're thinking about going in a potential other direction for KC the first week. So I may or may not hold you to accepting playing the Chiefs in week 1. So I feel badly because I kind of offered. Now I'm pulling it off the table. Let me throw you a different scenario. How would you like to open up at home rather than on the road? And we'll send the Arizona Cardinals into your place. And they might not have Kyler Murray ready. So you could be facing David Blau week 1, or at worst, Colt McCoy week 1. And your fans can acknowledge Jonathan Gannon when he makes his quasi-triumphant return to your would you prefer that, Jeffrey? If you tell me I offered you the Chiefs and you want the Chiefs and bang the desk, you got the Chiefs. But I'm giving you a different scenario. Would you like to play Jonathan Gannon and the Cardinals week 1?
All right. See, now you're asking me to be Jeff Lurie. And if I'm Jeff Lurie, I'm probably saying I would rather play the Chiefs week 1. Because of the financial aspect of it. I think, he wants to own the team, and it's in a marquee, like you're going to be the highlight of week 1. I think Jeffrey Lurie would want that, because I don't know. I mean, we've heard the reports about how upset people are inside the Eagles with how things shook down with Jonathan Gannon, but that's a guy they wanted to keep at the end of the season.
Did everyone forget that, by the way?
I mean, it's crazy. So I don't know that Jeffrey Lurie has the same animosity towards Jonathan Gannon that the rest of us do. As a fan, would I love to get Jonathan Gannon in Philadelphia on week 1 with a weak quarterback? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Get the season started off right with the Boo Parade. I think that would be beautiful. Yeah. If I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I think I'm sticking with the Chiefs week 1.
Good answer.
Yeah. Don't even get me started with that story, John. There's so many holes in it. It doesn't make sense. The Vic Fangio part is the most amazing part of it, but the calendar doesn't match up. But Adam Schefter says it. Hey, Adam's great. Tremendous. Nobody's better. But I'm not afraid to say it. He got that one wrong. That's bullshit. All you got to do is look at the calendar. Vic Fangio agreed to be the defensive coordinator in Miami on January 29th. If that date is familiar to Eagles fans, because that was the date of the NFC Championship game, long before any of the tampering started, which basically was a Monty Ossenford. Didn't understand. Oh, you can have a second interview. Shane Steichen interviewed after the NFC Championship game, but that was allowed because that was the second interview. It was the first for Jonathan Gannon. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'll end it here with you at John Stolness. Bleeding Green Nation does a tremendous job there. Phillies, they're going to get it going. I still think they're going to out-talent people. Long season. So we'll get that sneak in for the Phillies. The good bite. But for the Eagles, I want to end it at quarterback. It's not important, but I think it was a little surprising because, the Eagles went out and got Marcus Mariota to be the backup quarterback. And I think a lot of people, rightfully so, brought up, well, he could at least sort of replicate what Jalen Hurts does. He can't do it as well, but he can sort of replicate the RPOs, the zone reads. Ian Book can do it as well, at least at a much lower level. Did it in college. The guy they drafted 6'6", statuesque pocket quarterback, Tanner McKee. What is going on there? Why Tanner McKee?
It's an interesting question. I think they drafted him to see if they could develop him into something to then move him at some point. I don't think this doesn't feel like a guy that they drafted with the thought that he will really play meaningful snaps for the Eagles. So maybe you get him in some of these preseason games where none of the starters play anyway. And he's looking, he has a couple of second halves over the next couple of years in these preseason games where he looks really, really good. I know Brandon Lee Gouton with Bleeding Green Nation. I was talking to him the other day and he says, the tape on this guy actually looks like he can throw the football quite a little bit. And so
he can spin it.
Yeah.
Yes, so he can. So there's
long term, John. He's not
yeah.
going to play this year, but Marcus is only going to be here for a year in theory. You need a backup next year. 2024. He could be the backup by 2024 or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's a late round pick. Brock Purdy did it, so you can't say because he's a late round quarterback that he can't be a productive NFL player and he can't be a backup or even a good starter. So I won't poo-poo that. And we also kind of have to see how this new Eagles coaching staff, how it all breaks down, how the new quarterbacks coach is going to work with guys. And it is a different skill set. I also don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that you have a quarterback with a different skill set than your starter. If your starter is going to be out for a while and you have the pieces around that quarterback to actually play a different style, if your coaching staff can call a different style of play, I think this Eagles offensive line is good enough to do more traditional pass blocking and run blocking, but it would be different. So I think this is more about the future. And I think if you're thinking about, well, who would the backup quarterback be next year? You go out and you sign a Marcus Mariota-like guy again next year, or you use next year's draft to maybe go get a guy in the 4th or 5th round when you've got more picks and maybe you can feel a little bit more free to spend one on a quarterback earlier.
Let us not forget that in 2020, when Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts, they had the unstoppable Nate Sudfeld. And they said, no, we'll go get ourselves.
Another 6'6" guy, by the way, Nate Sudfeld.
Yeah.
Nate could move a little bit better than the quarterback they drafted yesterday, but we're not even going to argue that. All right, last thing for me, John. John and I talked about this in our first segment. Little crystal ball stuff for you.
All right.
When the season is over and done with, factoring in whatever missed time due to injury you feel you must for either of the two players, who's going to have more carries at the end of the year, Rashad Penny or DeAndre Swift?
I think it will probably, that's a good question. I think probably Rashad Penny, just because I think Swift is a better pass catching receiver as a running back. So I think Penny will get more straight up rushing attempts. Overall touches, I think Swift might finish with more overall touches because I think he's going to do more for you out of the passing game. Swift is one of those kind of boomer bust guys in a lot of ways like Miles Sanders, but he can break some big runs for you. But I think that Swift gives you that element as a receiver out of the backfield that on screen passes and stuff like that I don't think Penny necessarily does. And I think Penny has proven to be a more consistent runner on the ground when he's healthy. So I think in running plays, I think Penny will get more carries. I think Swift will finish the year with more touches overall, if that makes sense.
Always a pleasure, my friend. John Stolnis, read him at Bleeding Green Nation. Check out his Eye on the Enemy football podcast or his Good Fight Baseball podcast. Hit and see. Always a pleasure whenever we get you on. And damn, you look good compared to the two of us. We gotta stop getting these young guys on the show.
It's the filter on the camera. That's all. It's just the filter. Yeah.
You got a dog at the house? We had Kemsky on yesterday. He introduced us to his dog. You got a dog?
I do, but he's downstairs sleeping. So I'll bring him up next time.
Mandatory attendance from your dog next time.
Sounds
Johnny,
good.
always great. Thanks for coming on, brother. We'll touch base in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, guys.
John Stolnis, Bleeding Green Nation, here with us on Birds 365. Yeah, we can make it dog week. Your dog around or is your dog upstairs?
She's sleeping too. Okay. I like it when she sleeps through the show. Sometimes she wakes up a little too early and she does not want to wait to go out.
Yeah, my dog came down yesterday. She never comes down when the show is on. I guess I forgot to close the door. She came down and said, "Yeah, you're being a bad dad here, buddy. You got to get me out." We try and keep our dogs in check, but sometimes they just intimate themselves into the show. All right, we've still got an hour of show to do. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald. Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible, coming up in 20.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac and Mac here, Jody McLeod, John McMullen, hanging with Young Birds 365. Appreciate John Stonis whenever he hops aboard and joins the show. First hour, I asked you about the running back position. Just asked John about it, how he thinks the carries are going to work themselves out in replacement of Miles Sanders. Interesting argument. Don't count carries, count touches. We'll see if the pass catching aspect of DeAndre Swift's game is taken advantage of. I know you said this, and I agreed with you on the show. It's just not going to be a big thing in the Eagles' offense while Jalen Hurts is their quarterback. That's not what he does. That's not how their offense runs. They're not going to have designated passes out of the backfield or running backs in slots. It is what it is. I'm not going to say they're never going to use it, but it's not going to be a big part of the Eagle offense when Jalen is the QB. Instead of RBs, I want to talk about DBs here. Eagles had a bunch of guys both in the draft and their undrafted free agent signings during this offseason, more than linebackers, even though they had a bigger need at linebacker than they did for DBs, but they brought in a bunch of DBs because they, again, put value on that position. Here's the question I have for you, John. And again, maybe I'm too old school and I don't understand this. The ability for a player to change position at cornerback / defensive back in the National Football League in 2023. The Eagles are not alone in that they like guys who can play both safety and slot corner. It used to be in the National Football League, if you're a corner, you're a corner. And if you're a safety, you're a safety. And other than Ronnie Lott, the two don't really meet. They don't overlap. The corners were corners and safeties were safeties. But now a safety should be able to be a slot corner, and a slot corner should be able to go back and play safety. And you don't ask too many slot corners to go outside. God forbid you ever ask them to go outside and cover a wide receiver. When and how did that change? First of all, if you agree with me, please say so. If you don't, please tell me I'm just flat out wrong. But if I'm reading this right, when did that happen, and why did it happen in the National Football League?
It has. I mean, when did it happen? You know, it's kind of hard to point. I mean, the game as a whole has gotten much more specialized, more matchup driven. As the offenses became more matchup driven, bringing up Jim Sports too much today, Jim would always tell me, you know, defense is reactionary. You got to react to what the offense is doing. So that's kind of, you know, it's kind of served up to you what you have to do to match up with what they're doing. You know, Avonte Maddox is a perfect example here in Philadelphia. For those who forget, you know, he played outside cornerback the 1 year, and it was not good. He did not play well. I remember Howie Roseman before the season saying he had some close to your heart, some Aaron Glenn traits, who was a short corner, who was a really good player for a long time. You know, different game when he got the Mike Evans of the world out there, outside the numbers. And it's really difficult to deal with those guys when you're 5'9". And they move him inside, and he's a really good player. I mean, he's one of the best 5 nickel slot corners in football, and he's one of the worst 5 outside cornerbacks, at least if you go by PFF as far as gradings go. And that's sort of the swing you have. There's a couple guys, but there aren't many, and they seem to be getting less and less. I know Murphy from Arizona last year sort of played outside and inside. He's got that ability, but I can't think of many. Now there's a couple guys that travel, and again, it's all dependent on scheme, right? This scheme is looking for a specific. You mentioned those mirrored players. You don't need that in certain other schemes. And they'll go to more traditional route of safety versus corner. So in the Fangio scheme, it's really important to have those mirrored players. So part of it is dependent. And if they go back to a Jim Schwartz era of defense, it'll change a little bit, where they had, you know, Jim was willing to use Malcolm Jenkins in a, you know, he played 7 different positions. You ain't going to see that in this defense. I'll tell you that. So it's dependent on scheme as well. But the league as a whole, yeah, it's gotten more specialized, and that's everything. Except offensive line and quarterback.
Now, we have talked plenty about the Eagles linebackers and or the lack thereof, depth, and even if their starters are good enough to start, we assume the Eagles are going to be very good at cornerback next year with Bradbury coming back. Hopefully he has as good a year as he did this past year. Slay coming back. Hopefully he can be a little more consistent over the year. Great in the first half, not as good in the second half. Injury included in the second half, but again, you can't control injuries. And Maddox being as good as he is at the slot. Do you like their depth at cornerback? They signed Greedy Williams. They've got Zach McPherson.
I like it a lot more than I did with Ringo, and they brought in talent. Like, they didn't have guys who had the traits to do it last year. Like, if something happened, and luckily it didn't, Slay and Bradbury played every game. Again, the health standpoint of it, I would have not been comfortable with Zach McPherson coming in and you got to see a little bit of Zach. Again, I think Zach is better suited to play inside. I think he could be a good slot corner. I don't think he could be a good outside corner. Williams, disappointment in Cleveland, but he's got the traits to do it. Ringo's got the traits off the charts to do it. Does that mean they're going to play well right away? Probably not, but I feel more comfortable that at least they have the guys who have the physical ability to play the position. A lot comes into it. Communication is huge in this defense. Too huge. It's the reason I hate the scheme. But when I get criticized, Jody, you're one of the few people that know because you're forced to listen to me every day. You probably don't want to listen to me, but you're forced to listen to me every day. How many times have I said I hate this scheme? I mean, nobody hears it. Nobody. And the reason I hate this scheme is because it puts too much on the defensive backfield from a communication standpoint, especially with younger players. You saw Darius Slay, James Bradbury, who are two of the savviest corners in the NFL. Marcus Epps, high football IQ, younger player, but high football IQ. CJ might be loud, but high football IQ. The Eagles built it that way, I think, for a reason. I think Howie built it that way for a reason. And I constantly say, why did the Eagles play the Fangio defense better than anybody else who plays the Fangio defense last year? And to me, the biggest part of it, the pass rush is huge. I'm not going to downplay it. But the biggest part of it is they communicated so well. And I always point out blown coverages everywhere on these Fangio defenses, all over the place, just ugly blown coverages because they're not communicating. The Eagles do it, crap the bed in the final 30 minutes. And that's with all these football savvy, high IQ guys, and they still crap the bed at the end of the day because there's too much on the plate of these players in this defense. Now you turn that from Slay and Bradbury to Ringo and Williams. Ooh, you're going to see some blown coverages.
Yeah, probably. Certainly the two walk-in touchdowns against Kansas City in the second half are the most blatant examples thereof. I think back to 3rd and 30 against the Cowboys too, getting your nickel guy to be back deep in coverage didn't make any sense, but that was the play and they didn't communicate it. And the Cowboys were able to convert. So you're right. It's both the ability to communicate between the guys. And the reason that I don't dislike it as much as you do, I don't know if anybody dislikes it as much as you do, but I would question it from time to time during the year is because what the master says, when he was different, when he was the cutting edge guy, when he was the defense that people didn't recognize because nobody in the National Football League played it that way, then it was great. Then teams didn't have an answer for it. But now it seems like about at least a third, if not sneaking up on a half of the teams in the National Football League play the Fangio defense. Well, now everybody's prepping for it every other week. So it isn't as big a surprise. It still keeps the element of trying to keep your defense under wraps until the very last second so the quarterback doesn't know exactly what's coming their way. But if you're going to do it that way, you're right. Communication is an absolute must. Everybody's got to be on the exact same page. Responsibilities change. When it works, it's great to the tune of 70 sacks. When it doesn't, there are big plays and there are ugly plays that happen against it. And we got a new guy calling it this year for the disdain that the majority of this town has for Jonathan Gannon. Gannon had a damn good defensive year. This defense put up real numbers.
The Vic is the godfather of the modern NFL defense, as you mentioned. He topped out at number 3 in his top defense. Never had the number 2 defense in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think he ever had the top 5 talented defense. That's why Fangio gets the kind of.
Well, he had a pretty talented group in Chicago with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Eddie Jackson. He had a pretty talented group in Chicago, and they were really good. They were really good defensively. That's where he kind of took off. But, you know, again, Khalil Mack was Defensive Player of the Year. Phenomenal pass rusher. Akeem Hicks is, I don't know if anybody saw Akeem Hicks in his prime. He was the closest thing to unblockable this side of Aaron Donald. Eddie Jackson was the perfect safety for that defense, for this defense. They had a really, really good defense. And that's where he took off. And San Francisco as well, but which has had seemingly a good defense forever. And they continue to have a good defense. Yeah, I mean, that defense was really good last year. And people are focusing on 30 minutes. And I get why, but that's what I was talking about with John Stolness. Expectations are unrealistic, Jody. Oof. Unrealistic.
And they will not be dropped. I know the Philadelphia fan base too well. They're not going to go, we got to cut this guy a little slack. He's new. He's learned. No. The only thing that will be acceptable is a trip back to the Super Bowl led by the defense. And, oh, by the way, the Super Bowl is 60 minutes. In case anybody forgot, it's not 30, it's 60. And we expect the defense to play to that level. Yeah, Sean Desai is walking into very high expectations on this defense. And as John Stolness pointed out, exactly right, during this offseason, they've certainly they might put more money into the offense, a.k.a. Jalen Hurts' contract extension, as far as acquisition and player changes and upgrades. They've done more to do so for the defense. Now, they had to because they had more losses on the defense, walking away via free agency and the like. But Sean Desai is going to be expected to upgrade the defense, make the defense better than it was last year, which was the number 1 defense. So good luck with that, Sean. All right, Jody Mac, Johnny Mac, we got the Mac and Mac guys here. We're going to take one step back to the draft. We haven't had our buddy Rick Saratella on since the draft came down. He and his draft Bible give us both the Eagle read and the entire National Football League on the draft. Coming back here on Birds 365. Stay with us.
Weather forecasting is a team game.
We rely on each other every day, updating the models and passing along new critical information.
We have a team of 5 experienced meteorologists and a specialized weather producer, Paul. Say hi, Paul.
Sometimes what I see in the model, Cecily could see something different.
That's when we come together as a team to make our most accurate prediction.
And all of this backed by more than 100 AccuWeather scientists. It's a team game.
And we have the best team in town.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Celebrating the life of your loved one is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givnish. When the matriarch of the Dalloway family died suddenly at 82 years old, Life Celebrations by Givnish stepped in.
They will make this the easiest thing that I know it's not easy, but they will make this as easy as possible.
Life Celebrations by Givnish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
I just know that my dad who is in charge of everything, was not in charge of anything at that point when my mom passed. And again, just another shout out to this place for making it easy.
Turning tragedy into a celebration of life, no matter how hard, is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givnish. Life Celebrations by Givnish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you joining here on Birds 365 with Mac and Mac. We got another familiar face to join us here on Birds 365. He's taken a couple of deep breaths since the draft. Oh, he's already putting mocks out for 2024 because it is a 365 business that he's in. One of the best draft analysts that I know, Rick Saratella. NFL Draft Bible, all access football, substack.com if you want to get Ricky stuff. We're going to get a whole bunch of it out of him right now.
I'm going to start calling Rick the king of swag. I'm going to use with the NFL.
What's the hat? What's the hat?
New Jersey Generals, I believe, is the hat. What do we got with the green screen? What are the 2 X's? What
so guys, this is the Draft Bible 20th anniversary
there we
logo.
Go. Yes,
which I didn't use too much, which was actually last year, and I didn't get a lot of run out of it. So I said,
gotcha.
Let me dust the old 20-year anniversary, since this will be 22 now. So maybe a last cameo from the 20-year anniversary. But yeah, we got the NFL PA Bowl. We had 16 guys drafted. We're proud about that.
Very nice.
And always representing New Jersey, guys, as you know.
Yes.
There you go.
And DiNucci, by the way, getting a tryout with
and DiNucci, baby. Seattle Sea Dragons, right?
He's working out with the Broncos today, I believe.
Yeah.
A
bunch of XFL guys are getting snatched up for tryouts.
I thought they did a good job. Yeah.
All right, Ricky, we've been giving our Eagle grades, been getting guys coming on, giving Eagle grades. Some people handle grades differently and look at it differently. 3 days worth of transactions. How would you rate what Howie Roseman accomplished?
Well, listen, disclaimer, right? You got to gauge how you think somebody did. And so ABC is an easy way to kind of determine, like, hey, this is our initial reaction. But let's be honest, we won't know 5 years from now. I thought it was interesting. What is it? The 2018 class, only 12 fifth-year options were exercised.
2020. Yeah. The Jalen Rager class. Yeah.
Right. So that tells you, like, hey, we can't really draw any conclusions. But I got to say, guys, I mean, I'm no Eagles fan, as you guys know, but I gave kudos to Howie Roseman. It's the only A that I dished out. I just think they made a huge impact, upgraded their team significantly. This was a team that was in the Super Bowl, a team that, if they got that last possession, I believe would have won the Super Bowl. And so it's hard not to like what they did, and we can break down the picks any which way you want.
Yeah, before we get to that, Rick, you bring up that 2020 class. I do think it's it's a cautionary tale. As you mentioned, 12 guys got their fifth-year option picked up, and everybody's excited. That happens every year. Optimism. There's 31 first-round picks this year because of Miami. Everybody thinks they got a great player, but history tells us they didn't. And there's going to be some bad picks, some good picks, and some picks in between. So I don't know your process. My process for rating drafts, which I hate, is I sort of grade decisions. Like Brad Holmes out in Detroit. He might have gotten 2 great players. I don't know. Jamar Gibbs at 12. Jack Campbell, I think, was 18. They might be great players, but those are bad decisions. The value of those positions at those picks do not match up for me. Is that are you just about the players, or do you bring in the decision making?
No, it's all about team philosophy building. So let's spend a second on the Lions, right? They misplayed the Jamal Williams contract, right? So they botched that negotiation. They let him walk out the door. They basically signed David Montgomery for the same money, if not more. But wait a second. Then you go and draft. Like, if you knew Jahmyr Gibbs was your target on day one, that's not a snap reaction. That's something you've probably planned and considered targeting. So now you've let the heart and soul of your offense walk out the door. You paid the same kind of rate for a lesser player. You drafted a running back too high. Then you gave up DeAndre Swift, 10 cents on the dollar. And again, like, not to like throw rose petals at Howie Roseman, right? But I went back, I looked at the Miles Sanders contract. Miles Sanders is going to earn the same amount of money as Rashard Penny, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott combined. Okay. So that's, to your point, complete mismanagement. The Jets, what a debacle. Sorry, Jody. I mean, you get Aaron Rodgers and you don't get him any weapons. You don't get him any protection. I mean, what a blown opportunity. Wasn't the whole point was to ride this Aaron Rodgers wave, and you did absolutely nothing to help him out? Like, to me, that was
what do you mean? They got him Randall Cobb, and they're bringing in all his buddies.
Yeah, right. And listen, let me tell you something about the Cardinals, too. I like what they did. And to me, going back to the team building philosophy, in the draft, I want elite talent. I want to build a team with blue chippers.
Yeah.
To me, great. You acquired all these future picks, and you got Darnell Wright. Okay. You got B.J. Ojulari. Okay. You gave up Will Anderson for these guys.
Oh, you're talking
Chicago. You got a couple good starters, but you gave up the best player in the deal. And to me, that's the whole point of the draft, is to accumulate the top tier talent.
All right.
Yeah.
This is Birds 365, so we're going to stick with the Eagles, but you're just flat out wrong. The Jets had weapons. They didn't have the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers will lift all those Jet weapons that
Garrett Wilson's going to be scary with Aaron Rodgers throwing them the football. I agree with Jody there. Garrett Wilson is going to be scary.
And they've got talent in their running back. I know he's coming back from an injury, but Brees Hall will be just fine. But back to the Eagles. Here's where I need to ask you, Rick, because you come up with your rankings rating where they should fall, giving them a specific where they're going to be picked off the board grade and rating. We believe that the Eagles got Jalen Carter later than he should have gotten. He should have been a top 2 or 3 pick. He goes at 9. They get Nolan Smith at number 30 when he should have been somewhere between 10 and 15. They get Tyler Steen as a 3rd-round draft pick when most people had a 2nd-round grade for him. They get Sidney Brown. Sidney was probably the one who was probably closer. But if anything, if you had to say was lower or higher, again, he went later than people thought. And certainly Ringo, some people had 1st-round grades on him, and they got him in the 4th. Mama Mac, my mother used to tell me all the time, if it looks too good to be true, chances are it's not true. But this is true. We know where the Eagles got these guys. How did they get such great value on their draft picks, their first 4?
You know, I think very few teams actually stay true to the board and let the board play to them. Howie Roseman has been someone that, A, does take best player available. They didn't really need a defensive tackle, did they? And 2, he also, last year they didn't draft a quarterback, but every other year they have. Now they did sign Carson Strong to the highest undrafted contract. We talked about that, but they take a developmental quarterback, whether you like that or not, because that is what draft equity. He knows he can flip that down the line. But to your point, I mean, listen, Jalen Carter went, why? Because of the off-field concerns. So to me, that was the biggest risk reward roll of the dice. To me, that's the biggest payoff, though, is Jalen Carter is the most talented player. Nolan Smith, he slid. Why? Because he didn't play this year. So we're projecting him into this Hassan Reddick type of role. We didn't really see him in that role at Georgia. We just know, like a Trayvon Walker, we're betting on those traits that we're going to coach that out of him, right? So Tyler Steen, I thought was tremendous value. Kaylee Ringo, to your point, what was it? The shoulder was, I think he got the medical red flag. He got the call back to Indianapolis. And so you get a guy that was arguably a 1st-round talent in round 4. And I don't want to gloss over Sidney Brown because I think he's a better player than Reed Blankenship. I think he's going to come in and compete for a starting job with a 3rd-round pick. And Tyler Steen, you know, Jody, I was on your WIP show. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about Steen, but to me, it's still Cam Jurgens is the successor to Jason Kelce, okay? Because Kelce said it himself. had we won, I'm probably not back. Okay. So to me, you've got the successor in place. Cam Jurgens coming out was very similar to Jason Kelce coming out. So to me, that is still the succession plan. And Tyler Steen went down to the Senior Bowl and maybe was the most impressive looking guard out there. So to me, that installed a lot of confidence. And the buzz that I spoke to with the scouts down there, they felt like Steen was a future starter. So I think, again, to me, Steen is going to be the preference to plug in at right guard, eventually slide him over to right tackle maybe. And Cam Jurgens, to me, is still break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah, I think long term, no question about it. And if you look at the Eagles' recent history, they like big bodies at right guard. Brandon Brooks, tremendous player. Isaac Seumalo, even Landon Dickerson. People forget there was an injury to Brandon Brooks. He played right guard first, and then Isaac got hurt. Then he went to left guard. He was so good they just left him there. But they always want these big bodies at guard. They're okay. Cam Jurgens is a little bit undersized. He's not that giant big body. And Sidney Brown, you mentioned, I'm with you. If I'm a betting man, he's going to be one of the Eagles' starting safeties week 1. These are third-round picks, though. Early third-round picks, but third-round picks. If I told you both were going to start week 1, what's your comfort level?
I'm comfortable with Brown. I think there, is a little bit easier transition there. Ringo, to me, you saw
not Ringo, Steen, because Ringo Steen. they don't need Ringo to play because they have Slay and Redbird.
Sure,
but Stay they might need to play.
Well, to me, like Sidney Brown, he can play free, he can play strong. He would have to slide into the free safety spot, which I like him more in the box. So I think he's a little bit more vulnerable at free. He can do it. Steen, I think he's battle tested. This guy's a proven starter at the SEC level. I feel good about what I saw down in Mobile. And to me, I would feel good about Steen. I would feel very confident that he could step in there and compete from week 1. Sidney Brown, I think, Blankenship, somewhat, I would imagine going to be similar system, has that comfort level in year 2. But I think Sidney Brown, I think he's going to be a fan favorite. Just his blue collar mentality, the Canadian sensation, I like to call him, his backstory, I think endears himself to the fan base, and they're going to love this young man.
Let me ask you about Steen, because correct me if I'm wrong, but he played exactly 0 guard at Alabama, correct? He was a tackle his entire time in college football. And you're telling us, yeah, but someone had the bright idea of working him out at guard at the Senior Bowl this year. Good for him. I think it was a smart move. I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying somebody came up with that idea because he had never played. Maybe it's, oh, my God, he's an inch and a half short on his arm length. We must move him to guard because he doesn't have those monmouth long arms. Are they banking more on what he did in the 1 week at the Senior Bowl, or the fact that Jeff Stoutland's going to wave his magic wand and whatever Stoutland says goes at Stoutland University, he can transform any player to any different position? Why do you think the Eagles are as gung-ho as him becoming a guard as they are?
Well, I think we've seen this transition, and you're right. It's usually the tackles that kick inside are usually because of a deficiency. And I think with Steen, he doesn't meet the cutoff 34-inch requirement, right? But if you go back, like Isaac Seumalo, who had a chance to scout out at Oregon State, he was playing left tackle. He was playing center.
Played everywhere.
He was playing, he was everywhere. So Stoutland, like if anybody's going to be able to make that transition smooth, I think it's Stoutland U. So I think they're banking on Stoutland. They're banking on the track record. And I think you do. I mean, like, listen, Senior Bowl, he's not going up against Joey Bag of Donuts down there in Mobile now. So, I mean, I think it does hold some kind of credence. And, he's battle tested. You do it week in, week, multiple years starter, 3 or 4 years in the SEC. I think there's something to be said for that.
By the way, a quick story about Isaac, because he made me smile there, Rick, is he played every position at Oregon State but left guard. And where the Eagles start him? Left guard. at first, and then he moved. He played every position during his rookie season with the Eagles because of injury, and tight end, and he was an extra tight end. He was one of the most versatile offensive linemen they've ever had, and they felt comfortable playing him everywhere. That's rare, though. I do think people put, thinking Jeff can create anything out of anything. They're got Andre
Well, we saw
Dillard,
the
a perfect.
crossbreed, though. We saw the crossbreed.
Yeah.
Like, we saw Juergens at guard last year, but we said,
Yeah.
okay, he's a center. I think you'll see Steen, like, long term, I think he'll get every opportunity to maybe kick over and replace Lane Johnson. But in the meantime, let's try him out at guard. And if not, we got a pretty good contingent.
But I bring up Andre because Andre Dillard, tremendous talent, but he could move anywhere. He was comfortable at left tackle. He was not comfortable doing anything else. So you can't just create something out of nothing is what I'm trying to say, even if you're Jeff Stoutland. But NFC East, I want to shift it towards the whole. We haven't really gotten into it with a lot of our guests, so I want to get your thoughts. I was not impressed. I think the Giants did a pretty good job. Dallas, Washington, boy, I think they both reached for their first-round picks. Massey Smith is a physical freak, but I don't know. He looks to me like a two-down player. Emmanuel Forbes, a playmaker, but boy, that was early with some of the corners that were on the board. What are your thoughts on those NFC East drafts?
I'm probably a little bit higher on Massey Smith than you. I like them because remember they were signing bodies off the streets that just couldn't get the job done. So I thought they shored out. They plugged the need there. And you didn't hear, like, we feel like it's a reach because he wasn't mentioned in the mock drafts. And that's probably stemming from his off the field incident. He got pulled over for speeding, had an unregistered gun. And so, like, a lot of people were scared to put him in the mock draft. That doesn't scare Dallas, right? So to me, I think Massey Smith's going to be a really good player for them. Now, Schoonmaker at 58, to me, like, they got leapfrogged, right? Buffalo jumped them at 25, one pick to take Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid was their guy. So they got leapfrogged by the Bills. They panicked in round 2 with Schoonmaker, who's a great blocker, inline guy, but they got Ferguson who does that. And to me, like, Schoonmaker's like a movement piece. Like, he's not really a huge threat in the passing game. So I don't think, to me, Chris Vaughn making that phone call to Deuce Vaughn, that was one of my favorite.
That was a great moment. Yeah.
But I don't see a huge impact with this Cowboys draft. With the Giants, Deonte Banks fits what they want to do with Wink Martindale because he's a press man, cover corner. They can leave him out on the island. That's what Wink Martindale wants to do. Michael Schmitz at 57, I mean, that's going to be a starting plug-and-play guy for them. And I think he was one loss, four-time state champion in wrestling, one loss. I love those grapplers in the trenches, especially at center. And Jalen Hyatt, I mean, Jody, we talked about this. I'm not a huge fan. One-trick pony, pretty good trick to have is speed. And, you look at the Giants wide receiver core, though, he could potentially be the wide receiver number 1. So I do think, like, with the first 3 picks, Eric Gray in the 5th round out of Oklahoma, I think is Saquon Barkley insurance policy, right? Maybe gives them a little bit leverage in negotiations there. And then Washington, like, you're seeing the NFC East is drafting corners. This Emmanuel Forbes at 16, physical, undersized, plays much bigger, weapon with the ball in his hands. Jartavius Martin was another guy that had a good Senior Bowl down there. So they strengthened the secondary. But outside of that, like, again, Chris Rodriguez, they draft a running back that's almost an identical player as the guy they have that got shot last year, almost the same player. They already have 2 running backs. They're drafting another running back. Hey, maybe you should explore a quarterback, Washington. Just saying it.
Yeah, you and I are on the exact same page with the NFC draft. Cowboys, question marks. Redskins, what the heck? Giants, yeah, pretty good. Got to give them their props. Now, you did second guess or you questioned the general manager who landed the offensive Rookie of the Year last year and the Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. So Joe Douglas sends his regards. And, oh, by the way, write this down. Zach Kuntz, 7th-round draft pick, will put up better numbers than Schoonmaker down there in Dallas as a 2nd-round draft pick. Just remember, Jody Mack said this to you, that the Jets 7th-round tight end will do better than the Cowboys 2nd-round tight end. But, yeah, Joe Douglas had a bad draft. Right, Saratella. All right. If
Jody holds a grudge, Rick. He holds a grudge.
Another team drafting running backs. They got Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they're drafting more running backs.
All right. If the Eagles were the only A draft, who would the B+ drafts? Who at least got into the neighborhood of Howie Roseman over the 3 days of the NFL draft?
You know, to me, the two teams that really stand out in terms of like coming out of the draft feeling good about themselves are the Baltimore Ravens and the Seattle Seahawks. I'll stick in the NFC first with the Seahawks. To me, they've recreated now this Legion of Boom Part Deuce in the secondary. They've got this Devin Witherspoon kid. They signed you the Love from the Giants, had 100 tackles last year. He could play safety, he could play corner. They got Tariq Woolen last year. Jamal Adams is back there. I mean, this secondary to me is incredible. Now you come back and you take the best playmaker in the draft and you pair Jackson Smith and Jigba with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Zach Charbonnet. Now you got a tough between the tackles grinder to pair with Kenneth Walker. I mean, this is an explosive offense. I think they've got arguably the best secondary in the entire National Football League. Seattle's not going anywhere. I like them to win. I think Seattle's better than San Francisco.
Now you get into John territory. First you take the shots at my Jets, and now you're going to get on McMullen's team that he had going to the Super Bowl last year. You're not making friends here, Saratella.
I agree with Rick that Seattle's better than people think. I agree. I don't think they're at San Francisco's level yet, but they make good decisions. And by the way, experience. John Snyder, Pete Carroll. Experience. Howie Roseman, how does he beat all these young GMs? Experience. These guys don't get a chance to learn from their mistakes. Snyder's been there forever. Carroll's been there forever. Howie's been here forever. Why can't people figure this out? The continuity is better than the alternative, Rick.
Yeah, and you look at, I mean, I don't know how long Eric DeCosta was there under Ozzie Newsome, right?
Yeah.
Before, so... And they worked side by side for so long until DeCosta got that job. And so they get Lamar signed, sealed, and delivered. Say what you want about OBJ, if they overpaid or not. That to me is a high risk, but it's also a high reward because now you've got two guys, OBJ and Zay Flowers. They can line up outside, they can line up inside. They're not afraid to go over the middle. You can get them in space. That's exactly what Lamar Jackson needed to pair. Like, other than Mark Andrews, he had nobody else to throw to. All of a sudden, now they got weapons. Trenton Simpson, you pair him with Roquan Smith in the middle. Pretty good. I like this Stanford corner they grabbed there in the 5th round. Blue Kelly, Voorhees from USC. People thought was a top 100 guy. I think he got hurt at his pro day. But you got a potential starter down the road in round 7. I think Baltimore, to me, really might be the best team in the AFC.
All right, I just want to go back to Seattle for a second because I agree with both of you. They got a good young defense, and they got a chance to have a difference-making defense this year. But question for you. Who is Holton Ahlers? I don't know who this individual is, and he is their 3rd-string quarterback right now. And, oh, by the way, their 2nd-string quarterback I don't like a little bit. Drew Lock, and their 1st-string quarterback is Geno Smith, who I'm not going to take away from.
Had a great year.
He had a phenomenal year. I want to see that again. Sorry, Geno. After 7 years in the league, all of a sudden the light turned on, and you're a top 10 quarterback. You got to reproduce that for me again. Do we not?
They just made the unit around him stronger, Jody. And I will say, Brock Purdy with the UCL is no guarantee. It might be Sam Darnold week 1. It might be Trey Lance week 1. Who really knows?
It might be Brandon Allen. They signed another quarterback.
Hey,
what the? I don't know what. Yeah, San Francisco's got some issues at the biggest position of all, which tells you how good they are because they still find ways to win games.
True.
But
I will say, Jody, I'm a little disappointed, man. It means you didn't stay tuned to the fourth quarter of the NFLPA Bowl, because had you done that,
Holton played in the fourth quarter. How did I miss that?
Holton Ahlers, not only did he win the Hula Bowl MVP, he won the NFLPA Bowl MVP.
There we go. There we go.
And he's a lefty out of ECU, and Holton Ahlers is a gamer.
Did you say VCU or ECU?
ECU.
Or are those? Can you count those two teams together? And maybe if you put them together, they could win some games in the ACC, because they're not winning them in the SEC, no matter
Rick,
what.
all right, now we get to the main event. I want the bad drafts, Rick. Who had the worst drafts? Give me two or three of the worst drafts.
Other than the Jets, who you've already buried.
No, the Jets weren't my worst. I had the Packers, I think, were down there. The Saints, like let me pull up the Packers here and see. Van Ness, okay, I get it, high motor kind of guy. Musgrave I actually like, but to me, you took another tight end. You took two tight ends with your top 4 picks.
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
Sean
trying to help the young quarterback with, security blanket, I guess.
I guess. Sean Clifford in the 5th round, that was a little bit high for my liking. Lou Nichols, I hate to diss day 3 picks, but just nothing really stood out to me in terms of impact. I would have thought they wanted to build, just like the Jets. I would have thought they would have wanted to build around Jordan Love. I didn't see them do that. And then the Saints,
well, 2 tight ends, not 1 tight end, 2 tight ends. Isn't that building around Jordan Love, giving him weapons? No.
Yeah, 1 tight end that's coming off an injury, another tight end that needs about 15 to 20 pounds until he's ready for the NFL. But okay. I hear you. I don't think these guys are making an immediate impact. I like Musgrave. I think he has the frame. He's another one. He needs to bulk up and he needs to show he can stay healthy. And then Reed out of, I guess they did, Michigan State. To me, I just felt like they could have got better impact earlier in the draft. They waited and got tier 2, tier 3 options when they should have just early in the draft got immediate impact players. And then, the Saints, I guess, they went for the beef. They added 2 defensive linemen. Then they take Kendre Miller. That tells me that Kamara might be facing a suspension because they have a bunch of running backs there already. Hayner, they took your guy Hayner, and
when he's making Pro Bowl, Saratella, I'm going to expect an apology from you.
You're
on this Saints draft.
Yeah, he loves Jake
Hayner.
And by the way, the Saints. Remember, everybody forgets this stuff, Rick. I know you don't. The Saints should have had the 10th pick in the draft. They didn't. Because somebody fleeced somebody else, but we shall remain nameless. But they should have had the 10th pick in the draft coming in. They did not.
All right, I got an interesting question for you. And again, we tap into a guy like Rick Saratella for this insight, except for his disdain for a New Jersey team. He says he's all Mr. Jersey, but he's ripping a Jersey team. You know why? And again, it all depends on the picks you have. And the 49ers didn't have a 1st or a 2nd round pick. But they had a bunch because they had a bunch of compensatory picks. I didn't really like anything they did with any of their picks. They had at least 7, if not 8, from the 3rd round on. I thought San Francisco, and it could only be so good when you don't have a 1st.
They got a kicker, Jody. They got a kicker.
Did they take a kicker? Oh, that's right. They took Jake Moody as their first
Jake
pick.
Moody. Yeah.
So give me the Jake Moody plus evaluation of the San Francisco draft.
No, I mean, listen, Moody's a good one. He's consistent. He's accurate from deep, 99th overall. I don't know. I mean, listen, if you need a kicker, you need a kicker. Jair Brown, 87th. I thought this was good value. John Lynch knows a thing or two about safeties. I thought he pounced on an opportunity here because that 4.62 40, suddenly when safeties run in the 4.6s these days, we say, oh, well, you know what? He's got questionable speed. Jair Brown's a good playmaker back there, so I think he'll boost the secondary. Cameron Latu out of Alabama, he actually beat out Jaleel Billingsley, who was a 5-star recruit, and Latu had a great year 2 years ago. He battled with some injuries this year, but I do think 12 personnel, when there's so much focus on George Kittle, this is a great pass-catching target. So I think he's going to boost the offense. Luter out of South Alabama, you know, he's kind of this size, speed, small school guy. I think he's more of a developmental player. Robert Beal from Georgia, more of an off-ball linebacker. I think he'll be in a rotation as a backup. But, you know, you get down into day 3. Ronnie Bell, you know, to me, he hit 23 miles per hour on the catapult. To me, that's
wait. Explain that.
Yeah, so
23 miles an hour on a catapult.
So the last 5 years or so, you're seeing these analytics and people, especially these younger GMs, they have the catapult device that players wear around their chest. They even have it now where it's on film. You can actually do this stuff. But this is something that's been going on where they've been tracking players in-game miles per hour. And some teams now value this over the 40-yard dash time. Ronnie Bell at the Senior Bowl was the fastest player in game with the ball in his hands in actual game speed, 23 miles per hour.
That's a big number. Jeez.
That's
a big number.
We got the Kentucky Derby this weekend, right? I mean, that's a solid number. So I would, and that's coming off an ACL, I think a year and a half removed from an ACL. So I would keep an eye on Ronnie Bell as a day 3 guy.
No truth to the rumor that the Arizona Cardinals are going to sign Forte after he wins the Kentucky Derby coming up on Saturday. They could use a little speed.
Sometimes I roll my eyes at those analytics guys, Rick, but I agree with them. I mean, on in-game speed is more important than 40 speed. I kind of like that shift, and I hope more people take that direction, to be honest. I think it makes sense. I really do.
Definitely catches your attention, right? I mean,
yeah.
Well, Ricky Saratella catches our attention every time he hops on with us. All right, I got a hard copy, so sorry for the rest of you. Rick only put out so many, and I got one of them.
I got one of them. Thanks, Rick.
There you go. Out of hard copies, but if you want to go back and double check all your stuff, see if McMullen and McDonald are talking trash on Birds 365, whoever you're getting your draft information from. You want to see what Ricky has to say to continue your argument, or to tell you to pull back on your argument a little bit if you're making foolish statements like Rick did just now about the Jets. Rick, if they can get the PDF, if they want to download it for their computer, if they still want all your draft analysis, how do they go about doing it?
allaccessfootball.com. Appreciate you guys. Always a pleasure chatting it up. We're on to 2024, so we got a lot of great content. You can follow us over at NFL Draft Bible.
I gotta apologize for a second here. John, I apologize to you for interrupting him, Ricky. Saratella was right the other day. I had him on one of my shows. I said that Brock Bowers is going to go as a top 4 pick in this draft, and I go, that just never happens in the National Football League. And he said Kyle Pitts. And I said, no, I think Pitts was 6. He wasn't quite 4.
No.
Pitts was 4.
Yeah, it was 4.
You were right. I was wrong. So my apologies, Sarah. You were right about that. You're wrong about
every
the Jets,
dog. Every dog has its day every now and then, right?
Yeah.
You know, just don't look at my mock draft because I was terrible.
Except
everybody was, Rick. Mine was garbage. I think it was my worst mock draft ever.
It was tough. Before I get out of here, guys, time flies talking football with you guys, Mac and Mac. Congratulations. I see the 5-year logo there, but shout out to the chat room people. I see you guys out there.
Yeah, you're getting some love on the chat, as you should. Ricky, always the best, buddy. Appreciate it greatly. We'll get you on down the road. Thank you for doing with us today.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Rick Saratella, NFL Draft Bible, and you can get his stuff. If you still want it, didn't get it, he'll send it right to your computer. You can download allaccessfootball.subtract.com. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. You know what we got to do. We got to put a bow in this show. Stay here.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Yeah, Mac and Mac wrapping up a Thursday episode here on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, anything going on down at the NovaCare complex this week?
No, tomorrow. Tomorrow is rookie camp. Tomorrow we'll be down there to see all the rookies and the tryout players. Always an exciting first practice of the year. It's not really practice, but
right, it's kind of different. We've seen the guys. We know who they drafted, and we know who the players they've already agreed to undrafted free agent contracts with. How many workout guys they got coming in that may or may not get that deal?
they never announce them in advance, but it'll be quite a few. It's usually 20-ish or so, but if one makes it, usually one makes it. If two makes it, it would be a shock. I think what they like to do is they want to prove that it's a meritocracy, and if you work your butt off, and they tend to sign at least one of those guys and put them on the off-season roster. That's usually how it goes.
Coach loves to use that competition line. And if you put it actually into practice, it makes it easier for the coach to sell it to the guys who know they don't really have to compete for a job because they're making tens of millions of dollars. But if you have guys who are actually fighting their way on, earning to just get a job and a spot on the roster, does help for the coach's ability to motivate. So, well, that's cool. On Friday, have a good time on Friday. Here Friday on Birds 365 before Johnny Mac runs down. One local guy, one national guy. Kevin Kincaid from Crossing Broad will jump in. And Ian Cummings from NFL Network. Where's Ian again?
Pro Football Network.
Pro Football Network will jump in as a draft analyst as well. And then we'll kind of put the draft to bed. We had a couple of good guys on this week, like Ricky and Ian tomorrow. So next week, after the Eagles actually get some work in, practice. No, they won't call it practice, but some work in to get a look at some of their new young guys. We'll certainly be talking about that next week. But we got to get through this week. I'm here for the Friday show. Are you, McMullen?
Let's do it.
We'll be back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.